On April 11, 1945, elements of the United States 3rd Armored Division rolled into the complex known as Mittelbau-Dora. They found scenes of profound suffering and death, with thousands of inmates barely clinging to life amidst stacks of unburied bodies. The camp, established initially as a subcamp of Buchenwald, had become autonomous in October 1944, primarily supplying slave labor for the Mittelwerk underground factory producing V-2 rockets. In the chaotic hours immediately following the arrival of American forces, surviving prisoners, many still clad in the striped garments issued by the camp authorities, gathered near the liberators. Medical aid was administered, and soldiers began the grim task of documenting the conditions and attempting to secure the area, including detaining remaining camp personnel. During this period, one survivor, gaunt and weakened but resolute, moved through the assembled individuals. He stopped and raised a hand, indicating one specific man standing among the detained Germans. Through translators or gestures, the survivor conveyed a harrowing accusation. He identified the man as a camp guard, not just any functionary, but one notorious for his cruelty. The survivor recounted instances of savage beatings administered by that particular individual against helpless prisoners within the confines of Dora. Such an act, identifying a tormentor mere moments after freedom was secured, required immense courage from someone who had endured systematic dehumanization and terror. The conditions at Mittelbau-Dora had been exceptionally lethal. Prisoners worked under brutal pressure in the subterranean tunnels, often lacking adequate food, sanitation, or rest. Estimates suggest that of the approximately 60,000 people incarcerated there during its existence, at least 20,000 perished from exhaustion, starvation, disease, or direct violence. Subsequently, American military authorities began processes for handling captured personnel accused of atrocities. Individuals identified by survivors, like the guards singled out on that day, would typically be detained for investigation. Evidence gathering, including survivor testimonies, formed the basis for subsequent war crimes trials, ensuring that acts of brutality faced judicial scrutiny, even amidst the immense scale of post-war challenges. The memory conveyed by that survivor became part of the effort to establish accountability. The specific identification by the survivor was a critical first step in a complex process. American soldiers, often unprepared for the horrors they encountered, relied heavily on such immediate testimonies to separate perpetrators from the mass of camp functionaries and local civilians. As events unfolded, the accused guard would have been immediately segregated from other detainees. Military intelligence officers or personnel from war crimes investigation units, arriving soon after the combat troops, were tasked with preliminary interrogations. The survivor's account, though perhaps initially conveyed through basic communication, formed the core evidence. Obtaining detailed statements, however, proved challenging in the initial days. Many survivors were too ill or traumatized to provide comprehensive testimony immediately. Translators were also in short supply amidst the chaos of the advancing front line. Yet the act of pointing out a specific tormentor held immense significance. It was a reclamation of agency for individuals who had been stripped of all power and identity. It marked a shift from victimhood towards demanding justice, even within moments of liberation. During this period, Allied forces were establishing procedures across liberated territories for dealing with suspected war criminals. The identification at Mittelbau-Dora fed into a larger, systematic effort mandated by Allied High Command to document atrocities and hold perpetrators accountable under international law. The fate of that specific guard, singled out on April 11, 1945, would depend on the subsequent investigation. Corroborating evidence or further testimonies emerged, he likely faced trial, potentially at the Dachau trials held by the American military tribunals, which prosecuted crimes committed at various concentration camps, including Dora. The courage displayed by the survivor resonated profoundly with the liberating soldiers. It provided a human focus amidst the overwhelming scale of inhumanity they witnessed, reinforcing the moral justification for the Allied war effort and the imperative to pursue justice following the conflict. The initial identification was often followed by attempts to gather physical descriptions or any known names or ranks associated with the accused guard. Survivors might recall specific incidents, locations within the camp where beatings occurred, or even distinctive mannerisms of their abusers. United States Army Signal Corps personnel were also present, documenting conditions and events. While specific recordings or notes of every interaction might not exist, their general presence underscored the official effort to record what had transpired. The testimony of one survivor could encourage others. Seeing a fellow inmate bravely confront a former captor might empower others who witnessed the same brutality to step forward and add their accounts, strengthening the case against the accused. Subsequently, investigators would seek corroboration. They might look for camp records if any survived, or cross-reference the accused guard's identity with lists of personnel known to have served at Mittelbau-Dora. Consistency between different survivor testimonies was crucial. The brutality at Mittelbau-Dora was directly linked to the immense pressure to produce V-2 rockets and V-1 flying bombs in the underground Mittelwerk facility. Guards often used extreme violence to enforce impossible work quotas under horrific conditions, leading to widespread death and injury among the forced laborers. Therefore, the survivor's accusation likely referenced acts committed either within the tunnels during forced labor, or during roll calls, marches, or within the barracks area itself. Such violence was a daily reality, intended to terrorize and control the prisoner population. The process initiated by that single act of identification on April 11, 1945, represented a microcosm of the larger Allied effort to dismantle the Nazi regime's apparatus of terror and bring individuals responsible for mass atrocities to justice in the months and years that followed. The immediate detention of the accused guard served a dual purpose: securing a potential war criminal and protecting him from potential summary justice by enraged survivors or even soldiers appalled by the conditions. Order needed to be established amidst the emotional turmoil. For the survivor, the act itself was a profound moment. After months or years of powerlessness and suffering under that specific guard's cruelty, the ability to point him out to armed liberators offered a form of immediate, albeit incomplete, retribution and validation. American military personnel witnessing such scenes were often deeply affected. Confronting the tangible evidence of systematic brutality, personified by both the emaciated survivor and the accused guard, solidified their understanding of the enemy they fought against. During this period, the collection of survivor testimonies became a priority, not just for future trials, but also for understanding the camp's structure and function. Details about guard routines, hierarchies, and specific acts of violence were meticulously sought, though the process was hampered by the physical state of many survivors. The identification was just the beginning of a long legal road. Proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in a military tribunal required more than just an accusation. It demanded specific evidence linking the individual guard to particular crimes, corroborated where possible. Subsequently, the accused would likely have been transferred to a dedicated internment facility for suspected war criminals. Further investigations, including formal depositions from the survivor and others, would determine if sufficient evidence existed for formal charges under the laws and usages of war. The significance of that moment on April 11, 1945, lies not just in the potential prosecution of one guard, but in its representation of the fundamental shift in power and the first steps toward accountability after years of impunity within the concentration camp system.